Every time you see by $450 rent in America online, your brain should do two things at once. First, no way? Second, and okay, how? Because in 2025, the national rent picture is not cheap. Apartment List's national median rent is around $1,367. So today, I'm not selling a fantasy. I'm breaking down the real ways people end up paying around $450 out of pocket. And what the catch usually is. Reality check. Set expectations. Let's be clear, in most of the US, $450 is not the market rent for a typical one-bedroom. When you see $450, it's usually one of these situations. The tenant is paying a portion and a program covers the rest. They're renting a room, not a full unit, or they're in non-traditional housing like tiny home lots or SRO style setups. Method number 1, housing choice. Vouchers and /Section 8, the biggest $450 explanation. Most of the time, the real $450 rent story is a voucher. Under HUD's Housing Choice Voucher Program, a household's family rent portion is usually about 30% of adjusted monthly income, sometimes higher depending on the unit and rules. So if someone's adjusted monthly income is around $1,500, then 30% is $450. That's not a guess, it's literally how the formula works. And the key detail, in the voucher model, the landlord gets paid in two parts. The tenant pays their portion, and the housing agency pays the rest up to a limit. That's why online you'll see someone say, I pay $450 rent, but the apartment itself may actually cost far more than $450. Method number 2, public housing, tax income-based rent. The second big bucket is public housing. Chud explains that public housing rent is based on a formula, typically the highest of 30% of monthly adjusted income, 10% of monthly income, welfare rent if applicable, or a minimum rent set by the housing authority. So again, if income is low enough, a rent payment near $450 is totally realistic, but it's tied to income-based rules, not a cheap market miracle. Method number 3, SRO-style rents and why $450 is mathematically possible. Third, SRO-style housing, single-room occupancy. HUD's own guidance on SRO program structures exists, and rent limits for SRO units show up in HUD rent limit documents. Also, HUD's Federal Register explanation says SRO fair market rents are derived as 75% of the zero-bedroom FMR. So if a region's zero-bedroom FMR is, say, $600, the SRO benchmark would be $450. That's not a promise that you'll find it easily, but it shows why $450 can exist in some areas and setups. Method number 4, tiny house lot rent, a real verifiable $350 to $450 example. Now let's talk about a literal $450 monthly price you can verify. In Ogilvie, Minnesota, the sanctuary, Minnesota lists village spaces to park a privately owned tiny house for $350 to $450 per month with a minimum lease term. Important, that's lot rent/space rent, not a normal apartment lease. And terms can change, utilities and services vary, and you usually need the tiny home already. Method number 5, renting a room, not a full apartment. The last common $450 rent situation is simple. It's a room, not a unit. In many markets, the cheapest way to live is renting a bedroom in someone else's home. And the number people quote is just their share. This is the least glamorous, but it's one of the most common real-life answers when someone claims a super low rent. So yes, people really do pay around $450 in America, but the honest truth is it's usually income-based housing, a voucher, a room, or non-traditional housing, not a secret city where apartments cost $450 like it's $19.99. If you want, I'll do a follow-up where I break this down by which option is most realistic for working adults and what to search for without getting scammed. Comment, $450 how, and I'll make part 2.